Welcome to Our Girl Relationships. We talk about the problems people face in their day to day lives. Let's start with the video. My wife got laid off by her company around 8 months ago. She managed to land another job, but that company had huge layoffs too. She had mentioned taking a girls' trip to de stress, but it was a little pricey as she wasn't working. I owned a business, so we were financially comfortable regardless of whether she worked or not. We were doing fine before we met, so we didn't feel the need to have a joint account when we got married. I decided to surprise her by paying for her girls' trip. It was a 5-day luxury trip. I thought she deserved to have some fun after the years she's had. She was very happy when I surprised her. She was elated. I asked her who she was going with, and she mentioned a few names. The trip was a month away. A few days later, she asked me if I could pay for a friend of hers. She said that she wasn't able to afford it currently and would pay me back in installments. I was hesitant, but I agreed. I told her that she was responsible for her friend paying us back, and she accepted. I didn't recognize this friend of hers, but she said I was familiar with her. She said that it was someone with whom she previously worked. I took her shopping for her trip. I knew she hadn't bought any new outfits recently, so I thought it would be a fun outing. She kept texting her friend while we were out. I was irritated and asked her who it was. She immediately put her phone away, saying it was nobody, just a few girlfriends. I shrugged it off. I didn't want to think much about it. I just wanted to spend some time with her. A month passed, and I left her at the airport for her trip. I asked her where the others were, but she said they were already inside and some were on their way. She kissed me goodbye and told me to go back home. She said she would be fine. I told her to have fun and be careful. After that, I left. She sent me a message later saying that she had landed. I didn't want to call and pester her too much. I wanted her to have fun and take some time off from our daily lives. 2 days later, I was scrolling through social media when I came across her posts. I swiped through them, but I didn't see pictures of any of her friends. It was just her and another lady. I went through a few other posts and it was the same. No tags, nothing, just her and the other lady. I couldn't see her face clearly. I texted my wife and asked her who the person in the picture was. She didn't reply. A day later, I saw a few more posts, and the person in the picture was very clear. My jaw dropped. I was baffled. What was my wife doing hanging out with this person again? I immediately called her, but she didn't answer. I left her a message telling her to call me back. A few hours passed and I was raging. My wife had lied to me. I called her mother and asked her to call my wife's best friend and ask her where she was. I knew her best friend wouldn't give me a straight answer. She was supposed to be on that trip with her. A few minutes later, my mother-in-law called me and told me she, my wife's best friend, was at work. I was furious at this point. I put two and two together. The friend that I had paid for was the person in the picture, and I hated her. She had caused a lot of chaos in mine and my wife's lives. We had cut off all contact with her, so why was my wife going on trips with her? I made a few more calls and it confirmed my suspicions. Only those two were there on that trip. The woman in the picture was a bad influence. My wife had met her when we were still dating. That lady was a terrible influence and dragged my wife down with her. At first, it was just alcohol and partying. She wouldn't be home till morning. But one time, this lady had somehow convinced her to do drugs, and then their party got raided and both of them were caught. After my father-in-law and I somehow managed to get her out, she swore off her. She promised to never contact her or be involved in such things again. She still wasn't answering my calls, and she knew she was in trouble. I called my father-in-law and explained everything to him, and I could tell he was ticked off. My mother-in-law and father-in-law tried contacting her, but she wasn't responding. About 16 hours had passed. She needed to learn her lesson. She wasn't going to get away with this. The next thing I did was cancel both their return tickets. I even went ahead and canceled the rest of their bookings. There was a day left and they both can pay for it themselves. I informed my father-in-law about it and told him not to cave in when she calls. I even warned my mother-in-law. I told them that if they didn't want what happened previously to repeat itself, then they should listen to me. We didn't know how long she was in contact with her. And to straight up ignore everybody? What was she thinking? I could see the beginning patterns of this behavior. It was how it had started back then. It was better to cut it off now. My in-laws agreed. About 10 to 11 hours later, my wife started spam calling me. I ignored her. She was texting me continuously, asking me to answer her call and saying that she was sorry. She was explaining herself in the text. She said that she didn't mean to ignore my calls, but she was just very tired. I bet she was. She said that she knew I was angry and asked me to calm down and to please stop canceling all her bookings. She continued by saying that her friend had changed and wasn't the same as before. I texted her, "Is that why you made me pay for both of your trips?" I wasn't buying any of what she was saying. I texted her that since she was so keen on her friend is good, they could figure everything out together. I ignored her after that. She was calling me continuously, but I just switched off my mobile. Was she that stupid? Hadn't she learned her lesson? Around 6 hours later, I switched on my mobile. I just didn't want to deal with them anymore. I called my father-in-law and he told me she had called him and begged him to send them the ticket money. He refused her. It was hard for her parents, but even they knew it was better like this. Once her friend abandons her, she'll know. They can sleep at the airport. Even her best friend was pissed at her. She had called me up and asked me what was going on. I told her everything. I knew my wife inside out, and trying to talk her out of being friends with that lady wasn't going to work. She had to experience it herself. 2 days later, she was back. She came straight home. She looked at me and broke down crying. She was walking up to me and fell into my arms. She was a mess. After she calmed down, she told me that her friend had abandoned her and gone her own way. Who knows where? My father-in-law had pitied her and sent her money to come back home. I knew she hadn't taken her credit card, but she had her debit card. Her friend made her use all the money that was left there during the trip. I knew that that was going to happen. She left her all alone and broke. I softened a little bit and calmed her down. I drew a bath for her. I called my in-laws and informed them that she was back. Update 1. 1 month later. My wife obviously realized her mistake. I wasn't going to let that lady get away with it, though. She thought that she could play with us. Well, she needed to think twice. I tracked her down and contacted my lawyer. My wife had texts from her saying she would pay us back the money. I had a legal notice sent to her that if the money wasn't paid back, we would take her to court. I knew she already had a lot on her record. Another one would blow it over. I asked my wife if she had indulged in drugs and alcohol. She said she had a lot of expensive alcohol, but she hadn't blacked out or anything. She was just tipsy. I wanted to believe her, but she knew I didn't. She tried to explain to me why she fell into her trap again, but I just don't understand. We will have to work through this. I don't think you're the a-hole, though I felt it was harsh. It seemed like you knew what was going to happen beforehand. I hope you two work through this. NTA, I felt his rage while reading. I wish I had had the guts to do the same thing you did. It was required and I caved in. It didn't turn out well. He didn't leave her stranded, but he had predicted it would happen. OP was aware that she had her debit card with her. He already paid for 2 people's trips. The wife must have had something saved up. He even said that she spent it on expensive alcohol. NTA. NTA, OP's rage is justified. His wife not only lied to him, but also made him pay for a druggie that she got in contact with again. Hope she enjoyed her luxury trip. She deserved to be stranded at the airport. Where did her little friend go? She said she had changed. Huh? OP's a savage for tracking her down and sending her a legal notice. Druggy deserves it. She ain't gonna get away this time. Next story. I, 51, male, have 2 children. My daughter is my biological child. She's 24. My son is her older half-brother, and he's 29. Their mother and I hate to call her that was a hookup. We slept together twice, and my daughter was the result. I never knew about her until she was 5 and her brother was 10, and they were removed from their mother's care. She did not take care of them, and their school became concerned because my son was raising my daughter essentially. She told them I was my daughter's father and that I was not to know about her. But they wanted to try and place the kids with family first. My son had no family. His biological father and his biological father's family are all criminals and in and out of jail, or in the father's case, serving a very lengthy sentence. So I told the social worker I would adopt him and raise them together. It took some time. Even though it would keep the kids together, I was not a foster parent before this, so they were extremely reluctant to place my son with me. Ultimately, both kids suffered not being together, and I was thankfully able to keep my kids together. My son calls me my name or dad. It's interchangeable, really. He only met me when he was 10, and I was a stranger at first, so it took time for us to become true father and son, even after I adopted him. I never felt like him calling me dad was a must. I know he loves me. I know I am his dad, to him and to me. But our family is not typical, and trauma and time play a part in our relationship. We adore each other, and he tells me everything, so I consider that a win. But my son's future in-laws are bothered by the fact he uses my name so often. It apparently became a problem when they heard him rehearse a speech with his fiancée where he was using my name and dad for me. They complained to their daughter, who told them to leave it, but then they decided to give him a hard time, and later they decided I should nip this in the bud, and that I need to speak to my son and make him show the proper respect and decorum by dropping my name entirely from the speech and his vocabulary during the wedding entirely. I asked them why. They said it looks disrespectful and shameful. I told them I felt it was neither of those things. They asked how I could raise the boy and not find it incredibly insulting that he calls me by my name. At one point, they questioned whether I truly loved him and saw him as my son, which pissed me off enough for me to tell them what he calls me is none of their concern, and to keep their noses out of my family relationships. They were insulted that I said this to them, and they are making a bigger fuss than before. My future daughter-in-law told them they were sticking their noses into stuff that was not their business. But I feel like I made things worse, and they are saying I am a disrespectful a-hole. AITA? NTA, you're a grown man and he is no relation of theirs. How you two relate is between you two alone, and they don't get a stake in the matter. They can have an opinion, but they don't need to share it. I advise you to be polite but firm. Make sure your wife is on your side, but tell them that your relationship with your son is the way you want it and have spent years cultivating, and you won't be changing it. And make sure they understand there will be repercussions if they don't treat him with respect and common courtesy. NTA, it is. Indeed, none of their business. It's so frustrating to hear of people who care more about minor appearances than all the love and goodness demonstrated in this situation. I admire you for what you did. Next story. So I, 44, male, and my wife, 43, female, have 3 children, Anna, 22, female, Aaron, 13, male, and Scylla, 4, female. Sorry, I'm not a native speaker, and these are obviously fake names. So about 2 weeks ago, my wife suffered an accident. She slipped on the frozen stairs. While I was freaking out and calling an ambulance because I was terrified about a potential spinal injury, thank God she only got a concussion, I told what happened to Anna and to look after her sister. My son was on a school trip. She told me she has to go to work in a few hours. I told her, in not the best tone, to figure shit out. She called her grandmothers for help, then left with the ambulance. About 5 days later, when everything calmed down and my wife was let home from the hospital, Anna sat me down to talk. She said that she thinks that I'm parentifying her because of how much she has to take care of her younger siblings. First, I asked her to define what she meant. So here is an itemized list of her responsibilities in my house. 1. She has to cook a meal every week. By the way, she is a professional chef. It started when she was 14 and she wanted to try things out that she saw on cooking shows. 2. Keep your room and general stuff clean. 3. Transfer her sibling to and from school if it aligns with your work schedule. Edit 1. She brings them home if she finishes around pickup time, max 1 to 2 a week. 4. Be part of the bedtime story rotation. All of my kids were very picky about who reads to them every night. It had to be someone else. 5. Babysitting her sibling when she has time or it's necessary. To be clear, my son also does this with her sister. Edit 2. The necessary, what is 20 to 40 hours a year, part of it when both me and my wife are unexpectedly unavailable, but in cases like me and my wife's 2-day romantic trip in October, childcare is coordinated with multiple people, mostly with my parents and in-laws. In normal day-to-day circumstances, Scylla loves to spend time with her big sister. We need to limit her to about 1 to 1.5 hours a day so Anna could have some free time. So I started laughing because I found her claims quite ridiculous. Maybe I am a delusional old fart, but I don't think I asked too much from her. Then I told her, let's think about it as a business deal. That's what I get from this deal. Let's see what you get out from this. 1. You live here rent-free. 2. I gave you a car for your 18th birthday and I still pay the insurance on it. 3. I don't know how much money I spent on your passion. Half of our, quite big for our country standards, kitchen is your stuff. Much of it is professional grade. I told her I appreciate her and what she does for the family, but if she felt otherwise, maybe it's time for her to move out. I offered her that I will pay for the first 3 months of rent if she really would like to move out. I think I am fair, but I need some outside perspective. So Reddit, AITA? NTA, sounds like you gave her reasonable ways a grown child can contribute to the home, and if she does not like it, she is welcome to leave the nest. Parentification would imply she's doing the parenting, IMHO, if your version is accurate. It is giggle-worthy because I think she misunderstood. You didn't neglect your other kids, so she parents them better than you in part or whole. She's not taking care of any aspect of their lives in a significant way that would burden her. But indeed, if she feels it is a burden, she has every right to move out, and you're generous father for giving her the cash to do so up front. IMHO, your daughter should be grateful you didn't take offense at her implying you're abusive. Most posts here are parents who would have cut her off financially for that alone, usually after the child spreads the story to relatives, etc., and asking if they're AHs for not financially supporting an ungrateful, entitled grown child. Your response was not just generous, but very stoic and understanding if it went down like you described. Kudos to you. If she thinks you are preventing her from enjoying the complete freedom of an independent adult, she is, of course, free to liberate herself from the servitude of being supported and being part of a family. NTA for telling her she can fly from her comfortable nest if she chooses to. I don't know what her fantasy life is, telling her about being an independent adult, being responsible for supporting herself, but good luck to her in finding it. I think you should take your daughter's concerns seriously, even if you think she is wrong. What you're asking is not absurd to ask of a 22-year-old, but if she has been asked to do all of this since she was 14, I can see how it might feel to her like she is being used. The fact that your reaction to her concern was so dismissively laughed at and immediately suggesting she move out makes me wonder if this post really tells the whole story. Something just feels off-putting in your expressed attitude towards your daughter. I think if she does move out, which may be best for her, to be honest, you will be surprised to discover just how much you've been relying on her to parent other kids, and she will have the last laugh. Only, unfortunately, by ignoring her legitimate concerns and, frankly, her very mature approach to trying to compromise and mend the issue with you, you will have lost your relationship with your daughter in the process. Stay tuned for more stories from Our Girl Relationships.